Now from Cineo Lighting, Trisha Maas is going to give us a little presentation and tell us about some of their new lights. Thank you, Trisha.
Gonna use this guy over here. Hi, how is everybody? I have an opportunity to do one of two things with you guys. I can either go through the litany of what our catalog looks like, or I could talk to you guys a little bit about what it is to be an LED manufacturer, to make quality tools and quality products for you guys as cinematographers and as people who are looking for lighting for camera applications. So I'm gonna take the nerdy route. I'm gonna do the latter. I encourage everybody to check out our website. It's cineolighting.com. You can find out a lot of specification and technical data, different sizes, configurations, output specifications. That's all available online. I did bring with me an HSX. This is one of our newer products, and I am located on this back wall over here. So when we have a time to move around, I really encourage you guys to come by, say hi, and we'll go over some of those bells and whistles there. But what I want to talk to you guys about today is a little bit more about what color quality is in LED lighting. I have a PowerPoint. I'm very proud of myself for doing this. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of lighting, what Kelvin is, what color temperature is, what lumens are, what CRI actually means. I want to go a little bit into red, what red means when we're creating artificial light sources and what that means to you as shooters, what that means to the camera's eye. Full gamut color. You've seen a lot today, and you'll see even more people talking about RGB, RGBW, amber, what it means to have saturation and hue. As an LED manufacturer, there's 1,000 ways we can skin the catfish. So I'm going to go into how we approach it, with white light being our primary focus. And then we can go a little bit off the record of where Cineo Lighting is heading for future product development, what's not necessarily on the market today. So everything that we're trying to do as lighting manufacturers is to recreate incandescent lights, full body radiators. We want to recreate lights that are, that are full spectrum. And anything that's artificial, like artificial grass, doesn't always feel like the real thing. But at the end of the day, that's the way our ISO standards were written. So that's what we're ultimately trying to achieve, is recreating a black body radiator. But as we all know, anybody who's touched a tungsten lamp, it's Hotimus Maximus. There's a lot of lost energy that happens in the deep red. We often hear a lot about correlated color temperature. What that is it's actually the temperature at which a black body radiator burns. So if you're looking at molten lava, it's very low, it's 1400. If you're looking at the sun, it's very warm, it's 6500. And that's where we get the term Kelvin to come from. It's emulating these natural sources. We're doing it with artificial sources now. You can see this lighting facts. This is something that you would see on any kind of Home Depot industrial light bulb. This is actually really important because 99% of all LED manufacturers are looking at an industrial complex. They're not looking at things like we do. They're not looking for the beauty inside of the light. They're looking at more of the metrics, the quantitative data, not the qualitative aspect of it. So they're really concerned about lumens per watt. We'll get into it a little bit more later, but this is a metric that is completely against what we're shooting for as artists. And then, of course, we have lumens versus foot candles. I love dogs, so this one makes me really happy. But like a foot candle is like this dog getting a spray blast in the face. It's how hot is a light at that point. Whereas lumens is more the volume that you're dealing with, the volume of light. And you'll see that in different lights out here. You have ones that are very spotty, and you have ones that are very source. These are different tools. So understanding the difference between a lumen being on a specific area versus, or the lumen being the volume of the light versus the foot candle on a specific area is very important when measuring these different tools. Traditionally, people ask, like, what's its watt equivalent? But this is more important. How many lumens does it have? How many foot candles does it have? What does it fill? And of course, we have CRI, my lovely CRI. It's an averaging index. It's all it really is. Traditional CRI only goes to R8, which are these complex pastels. Extended CRI looks into these more saturated colors. R9 is very particular because we are, as humans, are big bags of blood, and we have a lot of red in our skin tones. So if we're creating a beautiful image, an intrinsically beautiful person, you want to have good reds to be reflecting off of their skin. So we look at R9, but it's important to note that R9 is only 625 nanometers. And we'll get into this a little bit further when we look at camera sensitivity curves. But our human eyes and our camera eyes go much further than 625 nanometers. So in order to get that truly beautiful image, you need to have lights that go further than what CRI actually measures, what that actually averages. And so as a binary rule of thumb, I tend to feel like if a light has a CRI of 92, if it averages that high, it's good enough to test. And by test, I mean put it on camera and see how that feels. Once you're above 92, the average could have come from any deficiency or any high mark, and you really can't tell what that means. A 92 is not, or 94 is not necessarily better than a 93. So always put something on camera if you really want it. So this is a visible light spectrum. This is what the sunlight looks like. In the middle, you can see there's this big green hump here. This is evolution has been really cool to us. We like green. Green tells us if the grass is healthy. We like that. Green measures our brightness. Green, we can tell if food is in good, like meat, for example. If meat is bad, it turns green. So as humans, we've evolved to be really, really receptive to that green wavelength. And so you can see that in the way our visible spectrum goes. And we push nearly to 700 nanometers. You can see tungsten, this red line, is deep and heavy into the reds. We have a little image of Predator up here. He evolved in a completely different way. He evolved to see all infrared. So he sees things different than we do. You see the image of the man up there, that's what he would get. And we actually have cameras in this world that also look at things that way. The point of this is that we are like biological human beings. We have the ability to interpret data as our eyes would. That's what CRI looks like. But what we're doing professionally is looking at things through a camera. So we need to understand what that camera looks like, whether it's necessarily a Predator or it's our Red Epic. So this one is really interesting. Can you guys read this? Isn't that fascinating? So I've took words out, I've jumbled things up, I've mixed and I've matched things. This is the power of our brains. So when we're looking at something with our eyes, our brains are the processor and we're filling this in. Fine for architectural, fine for theater. But if we're doing things with cameras, we have to remember that this wouldn't actually translate in the type-to-speech application. So we have to give things really good information. Good information in is good information out. So we have to always be testing, always be testing, always be considering what that camera sees, not just what our eyeballs see. So this is what our eyeballs do see. We're just like cameras. We have RGB receptors. Those are our cones. You can see that our brains are able to smooth that out and we get this really nice, beautiful image. We are also monochromatic. At night, we're actually colorblind. So we're just like cameras, monochromatic, RGB. This is an example of, well, it's a red digital curve. I'll just say it. There's a lot of different cameras out here, but this is a very popular one, and I really like the way they use the Bayer pattern because it shows you how, just like our eyeballs work, we have different cones and we have different sensors in our cameras. But what's really interesting here is if you look at it, even with the hot mirror, it goes well past 700 nanometers. We are looking into deep reds. So if in LEDs, all we're measuring is 625 nanometers, you are looking at an average of 75 nanometers of deficiency that is not considered there. As an LED manufacturer, there's a lot of different things that go into it, but I'll be blunt about it. The red phosphor is the most expensive. It is the one that is the least energy efficient. And so if you're always looking at numbers, lumens per watt, and what's your CRI, the best way to cheat, the best way to get a good score would be to be deficient in the red. But being accurate and being beautiful are very different things. And that's what we need to keep in mind, because we need to be beautiful in the eye of the camera. And that's what Cineo really looks at. Here's a couple of different CRIs and different lights, and you can see that difference, that gap that exists there in that red. Again, this is not something you would check out on a CRI. This is something that you're going to see when you put something on camera, and you look for that intrinsic beauty. Just another example of garbage in and garbage out. These are just reflectance of filters. So if you have an LED that's short in the red, you're dead on that end. You're dead in that health. You're dead in that beauty. So I was alluding to this a little bit earlier. Phosphors are basically just recipes. When we're making a light, it starts with a blue pump. We're able to convert that blue energy into a visible spectrum. Things only upshift. So we have to look at a lot of different things: the color quality, the blend, the mix, the cost. The cost is always important. How long is it going to be stable? This is the thing that differentiates a good high quality LED versus your Tinker Toy LED that you can, pick up at a discount drugstore. And we all know those look very different. We can see it in our eyes when things hurt. Traditional fluorescents from the 1930s, energy efficient, but oh my gosh, they hurt. They gave people headaches. They were heavy in the green. They were heavy in the blue. So just because something is an LED doesn't make it the same. So we have to be really particular about how things were made, and were they made with a cinematographer in mind, or were they made for an industrial complex in mind? There are 3 different types of LEDs in this world. There's a red, a green, and a blue. That's it. There's no such thing as a white LED. What you actually have is a blue LED with phosphors on it that convert it over to white. And that's what you've seen Cineo doing with remote phosphor previously. That's what you see happening on every one of these. Green LEDs and blue LEDs and red LEDs also exist in your RGB differences too. So you tend to take a white LED and shift it, and then a binary red, a binary blue, and a binary green, and you add it. What's interesting about that is they age at different rates. They're different cores. They have different half-lives. The red one in particular is the most photon resistant when it gets hot. So as we know, red is health. So if we have the red one getting hot and getting burnt out and becoming inefficient, you're probably going to end up with a bluish greenish light once it's actually gotten old. And that's kind of the opposite of what we're going for. So you have to be careful about doing things that are coming off of red emitters as well, especially if you're really reliant on that to create white. So what we tend to do is we use phosphor blends to turn our blue LEDs into versions of white. And as Cineo is entering more full gamut color, we're using that same phosphor conversion to create colors as well. So so that way we keep our base the same. Everything ages the same. Everything will, if something dims, it's dimming the same. It's going to remain calibrated, essentially. This is an example of an Osram RGBW spectral output. I think this one's really fascinating. So what they do to create white light in Osram, and this is a pretty architecturally standard light. There's probably a couple of Osram things here, but what they do is, so this big hump in the middle, that's your W. It's like this blob of like an amber greenish mush. And then they have your blue and you have your red. And when it creates white light, all it does is it either drops the blue and increases the red to give you tungsten, leaves the blob in the middle, or it drops the red and increases the blue to give you your more daylight and leaves that kind of blob in the middle. And then your green kind of comes up and down to give you that plus or minus. Green is a more specular spike to it all. But essentially what you're dealing with is this blob of color that isn't really anything in particular. You're just kind of faking everything in there. You never start with a truly intrinsic white light. So Cineo is going in more of a full gamut color where we start with everything on the white light base first. First and foremost, quality white light. First and foremost, something beautiful, intrinsically beautiful with deep red as your standard every time, no matter what. And then from there, we use phosphor converted elements to add green, to add red, to add blue. So you always start with a good base. It all comes back to this visible spectrum. How well can you fill that guy in? What is beautiful in the eye of that camera? So these are what our full gamut colors kind of look like. You start, again, with 27 or a 65, white light first. From there, you can add that really deep arching red, that red that goes way out into that heavy. What that red will give you isn't theater red. It's like a delicious Merlot red. It's like, oh my gosh, I just spilt my wine, but that was delicious red. That's what we're looking for, because that's what we see beauty in our blood. We're not necessarily concerned with our rock and roll reds here. So you're going to start to see this full gamut color. You're going to see Cineo entering the color space with the Quantum C80. This is a product that we are doing with Cinelace, very similar to our Quantum 120, which is a white light only fixture, 4 foot by 4 foot. This guy is 2 foot by 4 foot. It's huge. And then in terms of output, we're looking at about 150 foot candles at 10 feet. Very soft, very wide, very controllable, very white light centric with the ability to add that full gamut to it. We look at things as being very simple control with 4 channels. You start with your white light, you add your hue, you add your saturation, and you have your master dimmer. So simplicity first, hue and saturation is the way that we look at color, not at gel concepts. and then always white light first. Another cool thing that Cineo's been playing with is our dim curves. Once you start to put computers in these things, oh my gosh, like the world is your oyster. There's a lot of control. People are talking about lumen radio. We have lumen radio and everything. RDM, bidirectional control. This is kind of like the 1980s and we were running DOS and we were playing Oregon Trail. Like that's the kind of processing capabilities that we're starting to get in our lights. And once you have a technological revolution, you go from having simplistic dial-up phones to smartphones that are cueing your presentation. It's pretty fantastic. And we're very much at a technological revolution when it comes to lighting as well, not just with color, but also with control. So we're looking at photoaccurate dimming, which is a way of taking our dimming curves and applying it back to the camera. So as you go through 20 values of dim curve, you're looking at a stop of light to what your camera is seeing. So it's putting a little bit more finesse between the way that lights and cameras actually work together, rather than an arbitrary, what does 76% mean? A little bit of meaning helps. And then, of course, I brought my HSX. This is a white light specific fixture. It does all that beautiful deep red that we were talking about. It gives you the control from 2700 to 6500 Kelvin. Simple, 2 channels, consistent, reliable white light in a really soft, lumen heavy spread, and simple to use. And all this is made in the US. It's construction that's bulletproof, like you're seeing more people coming out with, stuff that actually is meant to last. So we're looking at things that are beautiful and durable and US made. And I'm gonna stop now.